worked for Munchausen support for a bit now, probably since 2022. And then I do some other like independent contract type work, and similar to what you were saying, have another couple of jobs that I also do on top of that. But, yes. And then, so I do that. I give trainings around the US. I've done quite a few media things. And then so I'm both a professional in the field, but also a survivor.
Which is amazing. I mean, who better than someone who has life experience?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And I mean, I shouldn't say, I mean, Mike is also a very good expert. He doesn't have life experience being a victim, but he has life experience investigating. So there we go. Do you mind, I guess, well, first off, what is Munchausen or Munchausen by proxy?
Yeah, so Munchausen by proxy is when a caretaker, typically a mother, fabricates, induces, or exaggerates illness in another being, typically a child, with knowing deception, in order to get sympathy or attention from, it could be medical staff, community, family, etc. This, I think a lot of times when we hear about Munchausen by proxy abuse, we hear about just the medical side. So we just hear of the feeding tubes, the surgeries, the medications, cancer, things like that. But we also see it with psychological. So some people, they've been told that they are schizophrenic, or that they have these different mental health diagnoses that they don't have, but might be put in psych wards or put on psych meds, different things like that. Or we also see it in educational settings with maybe IEPs with autism and ADHD diagnoses and things like that as well.
What's IEP?
Wow, that is a question I'm not sure I've ever been asked. I actually could not tell you, but I know that IEPs are like, so essentially when someone's
assessment?
in school. Yeah, so IEP would be like if someone's in school and is needing a specific service or accommodation or some type of support for usually developmental disability or something like that, they would be given an IEP, which would essentially, sometimes it's like maybe the student gets to leave class a little early or has somebody that helps them or things like that.
Gotcha,
now I'm curious what it actually stands for.
Intellectual Education Program.
Okay, that makes sense.
I made that up. I don't actually know.
I fully went for it. I was like, that checks out. Dang. One thing about me is I am very gullible and will believe anything. So, point in case, individualized education program. That's practically what you said, I feel like.
I said intellectual, which is not as, I'm going to cut all that shit out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's what it is. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know much about this. I mean, just from pop culture and stuff, and
sure,
which is weird to say, but I didn't realize there was also like psychological, what do you call it? Fake psychological stuff that mothers would do.
Yeah, I think that it happens more than people realize. And honestly, a lot of times when survivors realize that they were victims and reach out, I would say most of those emails that I get are, I don't know if this counts. I've never really heard of this, but would this be something? And a lot more minimizing and stuff like that, because it's not in pop culture. It's not something that's really talked about. I don't think I've heard it really talked about anywhere at this point, especially when it comes to like media representation, which I think, because sometimes it's harder to share those stories because they might not be like the true crime aspect that listeners are looking for and stuff.
Sexy.
It's not a good sensationalization.
Oh my God. I have a pen and paper here and I take notes, and I thought of this question 2 seconds ago, so I didn't write it down, but I already forgot it. Maybe sorry, this is how my interviews go. I edit because of me, not because of my guests. Shit, what was I going to say? God damn it. Doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. So it's, I mean, I just talked to Mike, so I know that it's almost always women.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, I guess you are close to the whole thing because you are a victim.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Let's just jump into your story. Can you talk about what happened to you, and then I'll write down my questions.
Yes, that sounds good. Yeah, so I was born in 1995, and
I'm old.
from pretty much right after I was born. So I was born 2.5 months early, which we see in a lot of cases that victims are preemies. Sometimes that's not even always true. Sometimes it might just be something that mom has always said, but might not actually be what's like shown in records or things like that. But a lot of times, like victims are preemies as well. And I had supposed issues from the beginning. Supposedly, my mom always said when we left the hospital, I stopped breathing and turned purple, and we had to go straight back. And then it just kind of went from there. So my mom claimed I had neutropenia, which is a rare blood disease that impacts your white blood cells and makes it so you get sick easier than others. My medical records very clearly state that I do not have that, but I thought I did until I was 22. So I grew up thinking I had a rare blood disease, severe asthma. I had inhalers. I had Advair and Singulair and nebulizers and all of those sorts of things for the severe asthma that, again, in my records, it stated that I only ever had mild asthma, maybe. That wasn't even like a for sure sort of diagnosis. And then, I was just always sick, and supposedly had a lot of like feeding issues. So I had feeding tubes early on, things like that. By the age of 1, there's a medical record that talks about me inducing vomiting on myself, which doesn't really seem like something a 1-year-old would do. So likely that would have had to have been some sort of learned behavior. They knew pretty early on what was going on. The medical records make it really clear that probably by the age of 1 or 2, they were pretty aware of what was happening. Early on, within the first few years of my life, they went as far as the doctor gave me a saline placebo, because my mom kept saying that I needed this specific IV Rocephin in order to get better. Nothing else would work. So the doctor gave this saline placebo, and my mom was like, yep, see, that worked perfect, and all these things. By the age of 4, there was a Munchausen by proxy report that was made, and they had video surveillance of her over-reporting and possibly inducing vomiting by various means. But to be clear, I never was taken out of the home for Munchausen by proxy abuse. And I didn't have any idea about any of it until I was 22. As I got a little bit older, things got different. So it's like I was a gymnast and loved to play and things like that. So it would be like that one day, and then the next day it's like I'm dying, something's really wrong, I'm really sick, I'm really ill. And so there's always just kind of this back and forth that I didn't really understand it, I think, myself. I think when you grow up in a home and are being told this is what this means, this is what this means, if your stomach hurts, you're probably going to die, or things like that, like you don't have any way of knowing that that's not true, or that maybe these are normal feelings or things like that. But there was always kind of this emphasis. Like I remember once I jammed my thumb in 4th grade, and I went inside sobbing. My finger was like black, and my mom was like on the phone. She was busy. So she was like, just wash it off, you're fine. And so there's always kind of this back and forth where sometimes my mom was literally on top of me. Like in medical records, it would talk about her hovering over me, things like that. Like she would be so involved. But then other times I was not allowed to be injured or hurt or have any issues. And so it was a very confusing sort of time. And probably, then by 4th, 5th grade, I had gone to the nurse a lot for stomach aches and headaches. And eventually the nurse stopped letting me go because she thought that I was just trying to get attention and skip class or things like that. I probably, I know now as an adult that stomach aches and headaches, that's like a normal thing, especially for a child that's experiencing trauma and abuse. They don't really have ways usually to say, this is happening to me, because they have no idea. So it comes out through headaches and stomach aches and other like body sensations. But I started to then kind of internalize, people don't believe me or I'm doing something wrong. So then throughout middle school and high school, that kind of continued as I had all these broken bones, which I put in quotation marks because when I've read through my records, I've not read any about any broken bones except for maybe one. But in my mind, I remember breaking like 10 bones and having casts and braces and stuff like that. So I don't know that I'll ever really know, but everyone around me, like peers, adults, teachers, started to treat me like I was the one faking these things and doing these different things for attention, which was really confusing because I thought that I was dying. I thought there was something wrong. I thought I just need help. And so it was really confusing messaging. And as I got a little bit older, talk about this all the time, but there were times that I would, like, I had an ankle injury and I would try to step on it in a certain way to make it worse. Not because I was faking anything or because I wanted attention, but because I thought my ankle was broken and I thought that the doctors just couldn't see it. And so they needed to be able to see it more so that they could help me because I wanted to feel better. And I thought it was the only way that I could feel better, which, of course, that came from some of the messaging from my mom and things like that as well. And then, in high school, I was taken out of the home at the age of 14, but it had nothing to do with Munchausen by proxy abuse or anything like that. Yeah, sadly. It was, shucks, how most stories go. But my mom was also an alcoholic. And so I was taken out because of that, which within a few weeks, my mom ended up in an induced coma. And I thought it was all my fault and blah, blah, blah. Here we go. And then I got put back with my mom.
Where was your dad at this point?
Yes, my dad so my parents divorced when I was 4. My dad used to drive truck, so he was never home. If you talk to literally any survivors, most of them will have similar stories about their dads being truck drivers or in the army or things like that, not really around. Once he was around a little bit more, my mom accused him of sexually assaulting me, and then he got kicked out, which again is a weirdly common experience for victims and survivors. I don't know to this day. I've read the police reports. I've read the things that I said as a 4-year-old. I don't know that I'll ever know the truth around what actually happened, but that was just, so I have no idea.
You have no relationship with him or anything?
No. I tried to have a relationship with him once I kind of started to learn everything and realize things, but we are different people. I'll put it nicely, but
fair enough. Yeah.
So
my dad was there all through my life and we're very different people. So
yes, sometimes it just happens. So I'm trying to see if I can get this light to work. And so I got put back with my mom and in high school, and she kind of started to convince me that I had this like back pain, which I was a gymnast. I was a cheerleader. I probably did have some back pain. Also, again, if we go back to the whole trauma in the body piece, I'm sure there was stuff going on, but I ended up doing like over a year of physical therapy. I did cortisone injection. I took Vicodin for a long time. My doctor stopped prescribing it because I guess like 15-ish, I told him that I needed more Vicodin and I mentioned how it helped me sleep. And he was like, that is not what this is for, actually. So that stopped getting prescribed. But eventually we found a doctor. After many said no, we found one that was willing to do surgery. And so at the age of, I don't know if I was 16 or 17, but I had an L5-S1 spinal fusion.
Good God.
Yeah, so I have 2 rods and 4 screws in my back that I'll just have for the rest of my life. And after talking to multiple doctors from when I was younger, it was a completely unnecessary surgery.
Good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done unnecessary things before, but not. Good God.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, where did your mom find the money to be able to afford all this?
Insurance. I don't know. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I likely had I'm guessing I had like Medicare, Medicaid at that
Oh,
point.
okay. And like these other meds that you were on, well, all of them, I guess, did they ever do any kind of damage to you as someone who didn't need them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think, for instance, I take Prilosec every day because I have really bad like acid reflux, and I'm pretty certain that, like, I'd say like 99% sure that the cause of that was from my mom like inducing vomiting on me as an infant in early childhood, and then obviously I was been on Prilosec for like since I was probably like a teen at the least. So
What's that?
Prilosec is just like I cannot tell you what these words mean, but it's like a PPI, whatever that means, but it helps with acid reflux.
I
And
see.
yeah, sometimes it's like people say like it's not always the best to take super long term if you like don't have to. So I'm assuming that starting taking it so young probably has not been very helpful.
Or yeah, I wonder too, like having induced vomiting at a young age so often, if it actually maybe you have regular acid reflux, but it's so damaged on the inside, it's just so sensitive now or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
God.
Yes, I
Okay.
also have like obviously like a lot of like enamel issue and like teeth issues, which I'm assuming again stems from the early vomiting and stuff like that. And my mom somehow was like a dental assistant when I was really young. And yeah, so I don't think that helped a lot either.
Okay. So you get this back surgery. I mean, I have so many questions. I'm almost like frozen. I'm like, um, I guess I'll come back to some of the details. Um, how old so yeah, you had the back surgery and how did that go? What happened after that?
I had the back surgery in, I believe it was January of 2011. I remember I was supposed to have it in December, but I believe I ended up having like pneumonia or something and ended up in the hospital for that. Which again, I just don't know if that was necessary. Like, I can remember being hospitalized and thinking, and like, I had been struggling with an eating disorder at that point in my life. And I remember like a big reason I couldn't leave was because like I wasn't eating or something, but nobody knew or anything at that point. But so then we had gotten it rescheduled for January. And when I got the surgery, my mom stayed in the hospital room with me, which I did not want, but she was there the whole time. And I remember, well, I don't remember the first like few days. I was supposed to be out of the hospital within a few days, but they had given me like this morphine pump sort of thing, like a pain pump for if I was in pain, I guess. But I refused to use it because I had a fear of meds. Wonder why. But my mom did not have a fear of meds. So she pushed it and she like used it so much. I was pretty much unconscious for like 3 days. I like would just like throw up if I tried to move or anything like that. Eventually they like had to take it away as an option because it had been like overused. And then once I did start to kind of be more conscious and stuff, I can like vividly remember like the first time I got to walk. My mom, of course, was along, and my mom was just like, she's yawning like that, that means that she's not getting enough oxygen to her brain and she's yawning so much, like that can't be good, and was like going on and on and on about these concerns. And honestly, it was just like a couple of years ago that I learned that that's a myth, like that's not even true at all. Like yawning is not due to lack of oxygen to your brain. But I held that fear for, literal years. Sometimes when I would start yawning a lot, I would be like, oh no, is this dangerous? Because of those memories. And by the time they did let me out of the hospital, they had wanted me to be like without a walker. But my mom was like, no, like you have to have a walker. So we got a walker. I decorated it with pink and zebra duct tape, and had to bring it to high school. I had to use it at school while I went around, and I had to stay with my mom to go through the healing process because my dad and my stepmom at the time both worked full time. So they couldn't take care of me or help me. And my mom had to help me with showers and things like that. And I just remember being so angry and feeling so incredibly trapped. All I wanted was to not be in that situation. And I remember like before I had the surgery, everyone in my life, so many adults in my life said, don't do it. You don't need the surgery. Don't have the surgery.
What?
Everyone tried to talk me out of it. But I was a teen. I didn't know. I was like, I'm in pain. I can barely walk. What do you mean?
But you weren't in pain?
Yeah. I think I was, but I think I was just talking to someone earlier today, or maybe it was last night, about, there's like the placebo sort of stuff where it's like when somebody is telling you like this thing's happening to you, sometimes you just start to believe it. And it's like, oh yeah. And so what maybe started as maybe some mild back pain could have easily turned into something way more if I'm constantly being told it's dangerous if you walk, you're having this pain, these things are happening to you and all.
Yeah. I one time walked around the bar thinking there was a monkey on my shoulder, but because of the power of suggestion, because I was hypnotized. I was one of those hypnotist shows, right? It's like, and if it's the only adult in your life that you trust is telling you your back hurts, I guess your back will probably start hurting.
Yes.
Damn.
I know a lot of people knew. I don't know that people necessarily had the term Munchausen by proxy or like the understanding of the severity or things like that. And I certainly didn't know or have any sort of understanding. So, and like I said, at that point, a lot of people had turned it more onto it was me doing these things. So I think that made it a little bit trickier and also like so much more confusing, because then I think sometimes even if maybe there was a part of me that was like, okay, this isn't happening or this isn't that bad or something, when someone's like, I was still scared or would still be thinking there was something wrong. So then when somebody would say like, no, you're fine, nothing's wrong, then it was like, oh, well, now I have to like prove that something's wrong again to get help, like going back to like that sort of thing. And it was kind of this learned behavior within that I just had no idea.
And you're getting gaslit on both sides.
Yes. Yeah. So confusing. And, my mom, I knew that my mom was not the safest because of the alcoholism. I didn't really know that until I was probably, 13, 14-ish when I started to understand that more. And I did not talk to a single person about anything that had been going on in my life until I was around 14. And because I didn't really know, I didn't have any idea. But even though I had started to, of course, know that there was danger or things like that, it was still me and my mom. It was still me and my mom against the world. It was still, okay, yeah, my mom's sick, but she really loves me. She cares about me. She's trying to help me. Whereas other people, sometimes it felt like they don't get me. They don't listen when I say things. They don't understand. And so there was kind of this isolation, both because of my mom, but then sometimes also because of others' stuff that was coming up, I guess, that made it so that I really clung to my mom. And also as a kid, you have to have a caretaker that is safe. And so you'll make it work in your brain to try to make that person safe for survival.
Right. So you thought she was dangerous, but you also relied on her. So it's like this, again, like this polarizing You're getting a mix of.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It sounds terrifying. I've had that feeling of being stuck before in life, and I couldn't imagine. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get lost for words when I'm talking with people because it's just
It's a lot.
a lot.
It's
It is a lot.
so much. Yeah.
I'm assuming you didn't have siblings or older siblings at this point.
I do have a sibling that is 12 years older than me.
I see, much older. Okay.
But yeah, so we like didn't live together the whole time like that I was growing up or anything like that. You know, she went to school and got out of the house and stuff when she could. So
Right. Gotcha.
yes, but she did a lot. She did everything she could to try to keep me safe and protect me as best as any, you know, she was 12 when I was born. So as best as any like child could do to try to take care of another child.
So she knew what was going on? Like she could see that your mom was forcing sickness?
I don't know, honestly. I think that there was a lot of other abuse and things happening in the household. Okay. And so I don't know that she ever really could see or notice necessarily the Munchausen by proxy stuff. Because she was pretty young. So
right. Was it happening to her or a different type of abuse, you said?
Yeah, I would say more different type of abuse for sure.
So she was just trying to survive herself.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so you were around 14 when you had the back surgery?
I think like 16-ish.
Okay, sorry.
Maybe,
so then,
I don't know, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. 2011, January.
It's all a blur, man.
Math. Yeah.
Did you have any other major surgeries or anything like that after that?
I did not. I don't think. So pretty much after that, I realized that my mom was like unsafe. I still had no idea about the Munchausen by proxy stuff, but just from the alcoholism. And I ended up like leaving the house and becoming homeless for about 2 years. Finished high school homeless. I like
couch surfing. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I lived with friends. I lived with a person I had used to nanny or babysit for. Then I lived with her sister, who I also babysat and nannied for. They're still like siblings to me and family. And then, kept doing that for a bit. And eventually I ended up moving in with my sister like a few years later once she had space and the ability to take me in.
Damn. Well, congratulations on escaping that. I mean, it's weird that you didn't even realize exactly what you were escaping. You thought it was just an alcoholic mother, which I shouldn't say just. I mean, that's bad enough. So when did you start piecing things together and going like, oh shit, was any of this real? What is this?
That was pretty recent. 18. So when I was 22. So before that, I kind of got stuck in a cycle of sickness, I would say. So like I said, when I still had been with my mom, I had started struggling with an eating disorder. Once I left my
mom's, was actually a thing though, not
yes.
She didn't. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that was for sure a thing. And I'd say many different causes and reasons to that. But because when I was with my mom, I was in like the hospital so much for all these different things. And then once I wasn't with my mom, I was in treatment centers a lot for an eating disorder. And I was pretty much institutionalized in a lot of ways for 10-ish years. So pretty much from, the time I was like 16 until I was like 26. I was pretty stuck within those systems because I think there's a lot of different reasons. I think there was a lot of diagnoses and things like that that kind of contributed to struggles, as well as when I was still a teen and was homeless. If I was in treatment, I had a bed, I had food, I had people that did listen and did care and wanted to support me. So there's kind of a lot of different things, I think, within all of that, built-in community, like all of that. So I kind of carried on this identity that I was sick, I was broken, there was something wrong with me. And it wasn't until 2018 that I was sitting just in a psychology class for my community college, and we just happened to be talking about Munchausen and Munchausen by proxy, which I had never heard those terms before. And suddenly I was just flooded with memory after memory after memory. I had had a family member a couple years prior talk to me and tell me that my mom would take me from doctor to doctor until she got the diagnosis she wanted, which at the time, honestly, it just kind of rolled right off me. It didn't really like click as anything concerning. I was just like, okay, I don't, sure.
Well, yeah, you always hear people, oh, you have to advocate for yourself and you have to advocate for your kids in the medical system and stuff. So you probably thought, hey, good for her. She was fighting for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I had no idea. And, you know, the same family member said I was kind of like a performing bear at a circus. And whenever I would be around my mom, I would seem like really sad and quiet. And then if they would get me away from my mom, I would be like pretty bubbly and cheerful and stuff like that. And, you know, she said that essentially my mom like kind of blackmailed, I guess, my family in a way. I don't know exactly how that looked, but according to her, extended family kind of wanted to keep themselves and their families safe. So her words were, I was like the sacrificial lamb of the family in order to keep the family together.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. So once I like learned about Munchausen by proxy, all of that I think kind of started to make more sense. And I started to be able to piece together all of these different things. At first, it was just like a lot. I was like so overwhelmed. I mean, it's just like you've been told your entire life that the sky is pink. And then now all of a sudden, everyone's telling you it's actually blue. And like trying to like grasp that is just like impossible. I often tell people and other survivors that it almost feels like this abuse like impacts you at like a DNA level. Like it's just your reality has been so distorted since you literally were born. And now you're supposed to 20, 30, 50, 60 years later, you're suddenly supposed to just like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm healthy and like move on. Like it's just so confusing. I mean, 8 years later, I'm still on that healing journey.
Right. I imagine it's a bit like people that are born into cults.
Yes.
Trying to leave a cult and then they realize, holy shit.
Yes.
Like, what's that called? Coercive control?
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah.
Do they use that term for?
Well, so I've done a podcast actually, or I've done a couple podcasts, but I've done one podcast.
Mine's my favorite though, right?
Like, of course.
Sorry.
Naturally. I've done a podcast that was specifically about cults, and we talked about like Munchausen by proxy abuse and kind of how that like fits in with like cult sort of stuff. With how it's like there's this person, mom, that's like saying all these things and getting everyone around to believe all of these different things. And if you don't believe or follow these certain things, you know, then you're kicked out, ostracized, threatened, all of that. And the process of like coming out of it, especially as the victim or survivor, or really anyone that's been around it, can be a lot. And there's a lot of people that don't. A lot of people that I would say even still in my life are like, no, that couldn't have happened. This is my cat.
Kitty. My dog is behind me, laying on a chair. Yeah, it's weird. It's like, yeah, it's a bit like being a cult, and then for the perpetrator, it's a bit like a cluster B personality disorder.
Yeah,
which I guess cult leaders are probably also have cluster B personality disorders.
Yes. Yeah, I always say my disclaimer is always that there is like a lot that shows that a lot of times perpetrators have cluster B personality disorders, but also there's a lot of people with that are diagnosed with borderline or narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder that don't abuse people.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And get treatment and can recover.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, cluster Bs are, you never get cured of them, but you can treat them.
Mm-hmm.
Is this treatable? Like, is this something that someone can have and then go through some sort of treatment and be normal, quote unquote normal?
I think that depends. I mean, you might get a different answer depending who you ask as well. But one, I don't really think Munchausen by proxy is something that somebody suffers from. I think that it's abuse. So, a lot of people, when you see it written out, like we'll just write like MBP. I added like the A. So I always say MBPA whenever I talk about it to really emphasize the fact that it is abuse. And I don't know, Dr. Mark Feldman and a few others have also started doing that, just to really try to emphasize what this is, that it's not something that someone just suffers from. As far as like treatment or recovery or things like that, I think I've heard very few instances where a perpetrator has acknowledged and taken accountability and gone through the steps to like actually get help to make different choices. There is an accepts model that Dr. Mary Sanders and some others created that kind of is like a treatment plan for a perpetrator. However, the very first, the AC at the beginning is acknowledgement, and a lot of perpetrators don't get through that. So I think that that's kind of hard. And I think though, there is also, I've seen a lot of experts in the field kind of work towards harm reduction or looking at different other like ways within prevention or things like that to be able to help a perpetrator not be dangerous, not like have other people's lives at risk and things.
And I suppose, actually, now that I think about it, I think when I was talking with Mike, it was one of those things where it's like if you can spot it early on before it becomes like really abusive, then you can like make people more self-aware and treat it then.
Yeah, I've heard of like a lot of cases. And I'd say honestly, even in my case, outside of the back surgery, which I will always wonder if like I hadn't been taken out of the home, if maybe that like wouldn't have ended up escalating to where it did. But in a lot of ways outside of that, I would say because the doctors knew, they were able to give my mom attention and care or things like that in a way that didn't lead to me getting my gallbladder taken out or, having all of these other like unnecessary surgeries and things like that. So I think sometimes I've heard doctors kind of talk about this let's wait and see sort of method or having appointments and then doing this like wait and see sort of thing. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, like we can talk and I can give you help meet this like need that you're having without you having to harm your child.
So when you were a kid, like a baby, they figured out that she was, I mean, I guess I don't know if there was a term back then for it, but they realized that she was bringing you to the hospital for no apparent reason. But then she doesn't, I mean, does that go, I don't know how the health system works, but does that get flagged then? So then like,
yeah, so I lived in a rural town, and so we didn't doctor shop as much as some of these other cases that we see because the nearest hospital would have been like 30 minutes. But we did kind of see different doctors within the same hospital, but I guess they knew and they had conversations about me and about my case. They also had, this was like back in the 90s, but they had a confidential file where they put certain notes like the MBP report or things like that in order to make it so that if my mom requested records or things that she wouldn't have access to those different things. But yeah, so they knew. And when I was 9 years old, actually, my mom had switched who I was seeing as a pediatrician. And that pediatrician wrote a long note about how she read my records and read through this confidential file and talked to the other pediatricians and had her own concerns about Munchausen by proxy abuse. So it did definitely follow me, but my pediatrician that I mainly saw, you know, what she told me when I met with her as an adult is that, you know, she made the reports, she documented everything so well, so incredibly detailed. I have over 100 medical records for there's concerning records from every year of my life from 0 to 18 minus maybe 3 years, and yet nothing happened. And like she said, you know, she can tell someone this is happening, but then they're going to say, okay, but do you want to go in front of a judge and say that this mother who deeply loves her child, that's child abuse? And, you know, she said it would have been better if I had been thrown down the stairs or had my bones broken or things like that, because maybe then she could have done something.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around abuse when the parent is taking you to the hospital all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, not for an illness, not because they did damage to you, but yeah. Huh. And I mean, I guess what I gather is this is kind of a control thing for whatever reason. It's a control thing for parents, well, mothers usually, and so is eating disorders. So is that kind of your way to have any kind of control over your own life? Was your eating disorder?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of things, right? I think, you know, when I was a baby and there was the induced vomiting and the feeding tubes and all these weird diets and stuff like that. Again, those things like kind of stay in your body. So sometimes when I like struggle with an eating disorder, I'd have like similar symptoms that I did as a literal infant. And I think that there's stuff within that of my body just kind of replaying some of those things. But I think a big piece for sure was a control piece. I had no autonomy. I had no autonomy even over my body. My mom was the one that had control over my body. And I didn't know that at the time, of course. I think at the time I just thought my body is betraying me. I didn't know it was my mom. And so it was a way for me to try to have some of that autonomy back, have choices, be able to, have some sort of control.
Do you have a relationship with your mom now?
So my mom passed away April of 2024.
Fairly recent.
Yeah, very, very recent. The last time we had spoken was November 11th of 2023, so the year prior. And she had, you know, in March, I believe, of 2023, she had again gotten really sick and been in an induced coma. Up until that point, I would text her once in a while, maybe for her birthday, or I don't know, sometimes I would miss her and would check in. Sometimes I would call her. I hadn't really seen her much. I'd maybe seen her twice in the past like several years. But in 2023, I got a phone call from my sister that my mom was in a coma, and it looked like it was the end. So if I want to say goodbye, I should probably come out. So I went out and I spent 2 weeks in the ICU with my mom, who survived then. And she it's not funny, I guess, but she was like delirious. I guess there's this thing that they call like ICU delirium. So she kind of knew who like I was and who my sister was, but she didn't really know where she was, or she would just say like the most wild things. But the most interesting thing was she was like nice. She was so nice. Those are like the last memories I have of being with my mom, and like are probably some of the best memories I have with my mom, because she was so nice. We just listened to music and watched movies and stuff like that, and she wasn't mean. I kept being like, we have to get her off this floor before the nurses realize that this is not really her, because they loved her. But yeah, so then from 2023 to 2024, I hadn't really talked to her much at all. just keeping my own boundaries. She kind of was going through a lot of struggles. She also has had factitious disorder imposed on self. So she like made herself sick a lot. So it was just kind of a lot. And yeah, April of 2024, weirdly had gotten a phone call the week before she died. I'd gotten a phone call from the hospital in our like small town saying that she was there and asking if I could give her a ride home. And I was like, what? I live like 10 hours away. Like, I certainly can't. I'm not really sure how y'all got my number. Like, nobody's ever called me like this before. And I remember I went to therapy a few nights later and I told my therapist, like, you know, it's just so hard. Every time I get calls from the hospital, I get so re-triggered and re-traumatized by all these things. And sometimes I kind of just wish that it would be over, that she would be gone. I didn't want phone calls like that anymore. And the next day, I got a phone call from my sister that she had passed. And yeah, that has been an interesting thing. I think I think a lot of people in my life kind of thought, this is just good. She's gone. She can't hurt you anymore. You're safe. You can move on. You can live, like all these things. But I think people
That's not how grief works.
Yes. And like, that was still my mom. Like, you know, like some people I've seen that have lost their mom that abused them in this way. Some people I've seen do just have maybe anger or do just feel like safety or stuff like that. But a lot of people I've seen, including myself, there's a lot of complex grief there. And it still sometimes feels like she's here. It still feels like she has control a lot of times in little ways or little things, but it has been a whole process. I think I also thought that things would shift or be better in ways. And, you know, there's levels of safety that are different for sure now, but it's just different. It's just a different type of grief.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is bore right down to your DNA. So, I mean, I'm sure there are times where it feels like she's still there and that you're like, oh my God, I'm still under her spell.
Yeah.
But when the phone rings now, you're not.
Yes.
You feel safe. You're not thinking,
Yes.
yeah. Oh man, brains and bodies are trauma. It's so stupid.
It is so stupid.
Like, just piss off already.
Please. That would be nice.
Wow. So, and I mean, a lot of people when they grieve, if they had some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, a resentment toward their parent, sometimes after they pass or even just before they pass, they start to realize, oh, my parent was actually also traumatized, and they find some kind of empathy or whatever for them. Was that the case for you too? Like, do you know her childhood or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I know she went through, well, I think that she experienced a lot of trauma, I guess.
It's hard to tell when you don't trust them.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I have no idea. I do know she was in a pretty severe car accident when she was, I believe, 17. And I want to say the driver, somebody in the car died. And from what I've heard, everyone that was in that car that survived has had a lot of struggles. So I know that she did have struggles, but I also know like she, you know, started struggling with alcohol when she was young. She, by the age of 17, she dropped out of high school and told her parents that she was going to marry some guy. And if they didn't sign the papers and let her do that, then she would move out of state and they'd never see her again. So there's a lot of like manipulation, lack of empathy and attention seeking and all of that sort of stuff like very early on. And I think it's hard to say what's all nurture versus nature and all of that sort of stuff. I think there's lots of hidden secrets in our family that I don't even know. But when she passed, I think, I don't think my feelings towards her have ever really changed. I mean, there's been times that I've been more connected to the anger. There's been times that I've been more connected to the sadness. And I think in her passing, I think that was honestly pretty much the same. Feel sad that, that she didn't really get a chance. I think a lot of what I saw as good mom, I don't think was necessarily real. I think was likely more manipulation or things like that. But I want to believe that, those pieces were somewhere in her and that maybe if she had gotten help when she was younger, none of this would have happened. But I also probably wouldn't be here today. So I don't know. So it's just kind of hard, I think I've always loved my mom. I will always love my mom. Whenever I give trainings, I wear a bracelet that says in memory that I got from the funeral home after she passed. And I bring a little coin that she got at like an AA meeting, I believe, and she wasn't actually sober, but the coin still like feels like comforting. And I have like a whole little Spotify playlist I listen to before doing trainings and stuff. And I just kind of hold it all. Some of the songs on there are like Cleaning Out My Closet by Eminem and like stuff like that. And some of them are like the song, I think it's called Mama by NF. That's actually like really, really, really sad. His mom passed by a drug overdose, and it's him kind of like reckoning with that and saying like he like loves her. So I just kind of let myself feel it all and hold it all. And my hope is, I guess, in everything I do, that I want to move towards a future where people like my mom maybe get help earlier on before causing this type of damage and harm, but also where survivors and victims that have been through these things are heard and believed and supported as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And luck with all that, because I'm not sure how to go about that. But I just have a couple more questions, if that's okay.
You're totally good.
Okay, good. Before, like after you've started to piece things together and before she passed, did you ever like confront her and be like, hey, this is what you did to me? And
so many times.
And
yes.
I'm assuming she denied, or?
Gosh, I reached out to her so often. I think sometimes I would reach out to her and be like, Mom, like I know what you did, but it's okay. Like I love you and I'm not mad and I just want to talk about it, which was true in a lot of ways.
You weren't,
especially in those moments. Yeah, exactly. You want that closure. You want someone who's harmed you that badly to just say like, yes, I did these things. Like I wasn't going to be like, okay, she admitted it, lock her up. Like, it had been way too long anyways. There's no way that would have happened. Like I wouldn't have wanted that, but I did want that closure. And there was always an excuse. There was always someone else to blame, something else that happened. We actually were both on the show The Doctors in 2019. She at first wasn't going to be on it. So at first, I had been going through 2019 was like I had been going through some hard stuff. Like there was going to be this possible like legal situation surrounding like a sexual assault from when I was a child. And so I was like in the process of navigating that.
Good Lord, woman.
There's so much. But God. Munchausen by proxy is like this much of my life, I feel like. But to people that know me, it seems like it's like everything, because that's all they hear me talk about. But within that situation, essentially my mom had known about what was happening when I was younger. She had actually like made me lie to the cops and keep going to this person's house because she was afraid of losing her housing, a whole situation. But so in 2019, she wanted to help. That was like the one thing that she felt bad for or ever really kind of admitted to in a weird way. So when I all of a sudden got this offer got asked to be on the show The Doctors, I think my mom thought that it was going to be around that for some reason. And then I kind of was like, well, no, that's not what it's about. This is what it's about. But my mom then kind of processed it, or the way she brought it up to me was that she supported me because she knew I needed help. And because I didn't have insurance at the time, I couldn't go to treatment. So she was hoping that they would maybe help me or something like that. But she wasn't going to be on the show because she was busy or who knows. But on the morning of the show, she called the producers and she said, no, I want to be on the show. Joe, like, said these really bad, mean, wrong things about me. And so I need to speak up for myself, which I didn't. And they like posted exactly what I had said. But she came on the show and they confronted her. And she, I mean, denied it all and continued to deny it all. But honestly, like made herself look worse. Like at some point she said, like, I did not break her bones, which I was like, I never said you did. Like nobody ever said you did. But now people watching this are going to think you did because that's a weird thing to say. And by the end of the show, she like wrapped it up with, she had actually always been concerned that I had been faking these things. So she was hoping that I would get help, which was interesting since it was like I was a baby and stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of where she, I'd say, landed with that. At some point, we just couldn't, there was no way she was ever going to get to a spot of admitting it, even with the records right in front of her.
Right. Yeah. I feel like my parents were like the exact opposite. I'd come home with like an arm dangling and they're like, walk it off.
You're fine.
You're
well,
fine.
And that's the thing, right? Is it depended on like if it, like when I came in with my thumb, like literally was black and she was like, it's just dirt, wash it off. And I was like, it's not dirt. Like something's
this time,
wrong.
Yeah. So I guess my last kind of question is, so as a survivor, like what kind of treatment do you do to like, is it PTSD? Is it like what, I guess.
You're asking good
How'd
questions.
you heal? How'd you get fixed?
How do you fix that? No, you're asking the good questions. I've had many conversations with people in the field and having to explain that these struggles that I have, that other victims and survivors have, there's no diagnosis. There's no current term. I've been told, well, Munchausen by proxy. Maybe? That's kind of where I like land kind of. So I've been told like, well, Munchausen by proxy refers to both the victim and the perpetrator. And to that I say, absolutely not. If I walk into a doctor's office and say I was a victim to this, they write down in my charts that I have this, and then they treat me so differently, which I already get treated so differently because of how I look. So it's already like, no, thank you. And then CPTSD, or I think, yeah, I don't know if I was told like PTSD or CPTSD, but CPTSD is the other one. And I do agree whenever I'm giving resources to victims, survivors, that is what I say, is looking for a therapist that specializes in CPTSD. But I will say in general, there is no term. There are unique symptoms related to like the medical trauma side of things and all of that don't, I wouldn't say fully fit with CPTSD, and CPTSD isn't even in the DSM, so it's not even like an actual diagnosis. People know more about it, I would say, these days and stuff, but it's not a full like diagnosis. So anyways, that is something that needs to change. But as far as healing, again, there's no current research on victims and survivors. I think there's research maybe coming out that seems to be related to children that were taken out of their home early on and have gone through healing. But again, that's going to look so different than someone that's in their 50s and just finds out about this. That 50-year-old that had zero support, zero validation, zero anything, and had to just like muscle through life, versus this child who hopefully did end up starting to have some validation and support and care. So there's a long way to go as far as like there's nothing online at this time for survivors, I would say still. We do support groups.
Okay.
There we go.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do free support groups through Munchausen support for survivors. But even that, it's like we have a waiting list that's like months long because we don't have enough people that can help with facilitating them and things like that, because there is so much care that has to go into it. A lot of people, when I talk to survivors, I'm typically the first survivor they've ever spoken to. I'm the first person that gets it without them having to explain so much. And that's a lot. That is so much for people to hold. And so sometimes throwing someone into just this peer group space can be re-traumatizing. It can be like really too much. So I think there's, a long way to go with healing. I think that community is so important. I think identity construction and like being able to have identity outside of mom, identity outside of sickness, all of that is important. I think that being able to tell your story and like share and have people hear you and believe you is really important. I also think one of the big things is that, there's nobody you can go and sit with and say, hi, I was a victim to this. Here's my thousands of pages of records. Can you help me figure out what's actually happening in my body? That doesn't exist yet. So you have to do all of that. And you might not even be able to get your records. So you might not even be able to like look at those. You might just have to like somehow try to navigate all of this on your own after never being able to listen to your body or understand yourself. And so oftentimes one of the biggest things I see is there's a space of I'm sick. Then you find out all this was fake. So now you're like, I must be fully healthy. So then you start to like avoid your body, avoid anything, and like stop taking meds, stop listening, try to push through all these things because it must all be fake. And then you hit a point where it's like, okay, there are things happening here, and having to like navigate how to hold all of that, how to hold I'm healthy and I need these medications. I'm healthy and this thing is happening. And I think that is a really big struggle that I see a lot, including for myself. I think I'm still trying to navigate that. And I think other people struggle to like understand that as well. A lot of times, I think I've heard from a lot of people that just see victims as chaotic, as having Munchausen's themselves, as doing all these different things. But there's no research that shows that I know of.
Right. Well, I guess it's hard too, like for something that isn't a whole lot of research on, and everyone's different. So it's like, how the hell do we, this is hard. Every situation is different. Every culture is different. Every parent is, it's like, my God. And there's never a one size fits all treatment for any type of thing. So to try to even begin, man. Absolutely. I notice you have a ball playing with mine too.
I love that.
A little stressful.
I will say though that one that you have, I just dimples. Get mad that you can't push them all in.
I'm trying to remember what my record is. I think it's 7 or 8.
I think that's probably around where I've gotten to also. My friend just got me this like Nido thing. Yeah. It doesn't really seem to pop or anything. So anyways.
But that little poops, that's very satisfying.
Yes. I do love the sound. I don't know if you can really see it. Oh yeah. You see that like black backpack? That is just a backpack literally filled with fidgets that I bring to trivia every Wednesday for my friends because almost all of us have ADHD or are neurodivergent in some way. And so I just pour it on the table, and now like the waitresses and like waiters come over and they play with the fidgets, and it's
you should give reviews. Fidget reviews.
Gosh, maybe they'll start sending me some then.
Yeah, exactly. You could tell it's been about an hour of conversation because now we're like
talking about fidgets.
Yeah, we're like, yeah. Anyway, I guess if I was going to ask anything really quickly, if you were to tell someone who thinks they might be a victim or they see their sister doing it to their nephew or niece or something, what recommendation would you give them?
Yeah, to someone that sees this like maybe happening to somebody else, I mean, I would say, of course, like reach out to Munchausen support, reach out to me personally, whatever. Obviously, being able to get resources on how to report, when to report, what to do, things like that. There's like these APSAC guidelines that were created on kind of how to go about this type of abuse. And there's just like other things like that, templates on how to report to maybe be heard or things. So I would say that. And also, I guess this would go for anyone, this is for, I guess, professionals people who see it in their family, people who are victims themselves, like also take care of yourself, get support for yourself. I think that especially I see so often, I see professionals or people who see it happening. It's like there's, of course, an urgency because sometimes there is imminent danger. But then there's also this not taking care of themselves and then burning out, or maybe not being able to show up in the most trauma-informed, helpful way. So I think that that's like a really, really important thing. And, this trauma impacts everyone involved. Yeah, I think that it's not just the person that was the victim that is impacted. And I think, a lot of times, a lot of people get left out. To victims and survivors, again, also reach out. I think so many of us have felt alone for so long. I think most survivors I talk to always want to do something, are like, there's nothing being done. I have to change the world. I have to do all these things. And there are people behind the scenes trying to start doing things, that are doing things. So like get plugged in, see like maybe where you can aid within it all, but also let yourself heal, let yourself get support for you. I've talked to so many survivors that have been like, I have to do all these things because nobody is. And once they see that there are people doing some things, they're like, okay, actually, I want nothing to do with this. I want to go do something else with my life. And yes, like do that. So I think just knowing like, one,
self-boundaries maybe.
Yes, self-boundaries are so important. Reaching out, having community is important. And just knowing that like you're not alone. You're not just making it up. And even if you did things that you feel shame for, you can still talk about those things with people and still like have support. There's likely a reason as to why or what might have been going on.
Be sure to subscribe and to like this video. You can listen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is Todd Rennebaum saying, make your beds and take your meds. Keep watching for more interviews with incredible people telling their stories of resilience and adversity with mental health and mental illness.